September 11th, we all know where we were on 9/11 when the two planes hit the towers in New York City. It seemed like the world stood still for a moment, and then we all knew the world was changed forever. In fire halls all across the United States, all across Canada, all over the world, those who died trying to save people in those towers are still remembered, like here in this fire hall in Charlottetown. But there's another 9/11 that we need to be remembering as well, a 9/11 that happened earlier, and one that may have changed our world even more significantly than the horrific violence that was witnessed in New York City on 9/11. And that was the September 11th coup in Chile in 1973, when the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende was overthrown by Pinochet's military, backed by the US CIA. And what resulted was mass violence, torture, repression. Thousands of people disappeared. Artists, union activists, teachers, thinkers, people like this great singer Victor Jara. Murdered after being tortured in the Santiago Stadium. So why do we remember that 9/11 less than the main 9/11? Because the implications of what happened on the original 9/11 are still with us. Certainly for the people of Latin America, the violence and the repression by fascist military swept through the region, and we saw coup after coup after coup, country after country after country, where democracy was undermined and replaced by disappearances and torture gangs. But Chile was the place where the so-called Chilean model of economic reform was created. It was done under the so-called Chicago School of Milton Friedman. And Friedman and his gang of Chicago economists were a band of economic extremists who wanted to roll back the huge wins that the middle class had won since 1945 in the United States. They wanted to push back the whole vision of investment in communities, of holding corporations responsible, of ensuring that workers had wage increases and rights. You know, from 1945 up to 1980, you can see in North America this steady rise of the middle class, and it stops dead in 1980. It stops dead in 1980 because of what happened in Chile in 1973. Let me explain. After Pinochet came to power, he invited Friedman and his gang of fairly weird marginal economic theorists to experiment with Chile. They called it an experiment of freedom. Well, it was freedom done with the gun. It was freedom done with throwing people out of helicopters and making them be disappeared. But what the Chilean model was a mass transfer of power and economic rights from the public into the private hands. The Chilean model under Friedman didn't go very well. Inflation spiked, 177,000 jobs were lost, but the rich made out like bandits. That was the secret of the Chilean model. And out of what happened in Chile, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, a generation of right-wing ideologues decided that the Milton Friedman model, the Chilean model, was the model to bring to North America, to bring to England, and we've seen the results of that. We've seen, as I said, 1980, the steady deterioration to today, the rise of economic inequity. It all goes back to that original 9/11. If you read Naomi Klein's incredible book, Shock Doctrine, she talks about the original 9/11 as being the model for what the global economy has come. The massive transfer of wealth from public to private hands, the use of bailouts to create the benefits for the oligarchs while ordinary people suffered. An economy that is based not so much on economic democracy, but on the power of the few. That was the impact of the original 9/11 and the overthrow of the Allende government on September 11th, 1973. So on this 9/11, we still mourn the people who died in the towers, We still think of the huge violence that resulted from going after the perpetrators of those acts, and as well the people in Iraq who had nothing to do with it, and the violence that was perpetrated there. But we need to remember the original 9/11, because economically it is still impacting us today. It is still the model that is used by the right wing. They still believe in Milton Friedman, and they are more than willing to defend the legacy of monsters like Augusto Pinochet. And if we're going to stand up for democracy, we're going to stand up for values, we're going to stand up for economic fairness, we have to remember the impacts of that original 9/11. Charlie Angus, for the Midas Canada Network, for the Resistance Network, I need you to subscribe, support us, share what we're talking about, because we're trying to build this global movement of resistance. And to do that, we need to know our history. We need to know how we got in this position, because when we know our history and what they did on terms of the right to our democracy, we can begin to find tools to fight back. So for the resistance, thank you. And hey, for anyone who lost anyone on 9/11, our deepest sympathies with you. Please support us, and please continue to spread the word. Charlie Angus, Midas Canada, the Midas Touch Network. We are the resistance, and we are going from the resistance to the offensive.
Yo no canto por cantar, ni por tener buena voz. Canto porque la guitarra tiene sentido y razón. Tiene corazón de tierra y alas de palomita. Es como el agua bendita, santigua glorias y penas. Aquí se encajó mi canto, como dijera Violeta. Guitarra trabajadora, con olor a primavera. Que no es guitarra de ricos, ni cosa que se parezca. Mi canto es de los andamios para alcanzar las estrellas. Que el canto tiene sentido cuando palpiten las venas del que morirá cantando las verdades verdaderas. No las lisonjas fugaces, ni las famas extranjeras, sino el canto de una lonja hasta el fondo de la tierra. llega todo y donde todo comienza. Canto que ha sido valiente, siempre será canción nueva. Siempre será canción nueva. Siempre será canción nueva.